21st of November 2025, so began the Ember SMP, the last in a long series of servers for my schoolmates. It burned bright with a ridiculous amount of activity, but only lasted 1 week because of a bad admin, cheating players, and the ego of just about everyone who had relevance on the server. Before I discuss the server itself, the background of it has to be discussed. The server admin, Zebras, who had hosted all previous servers, was an easily manipulated and incompetent admin-abusing fool. These aspects were present on the previous server called Isle, which had been a cooperative, peaceful server that lasted by our standards decently long at 3 weeks or so. We had taken a chance by inviting a known troublemaker and enemy on the servers before that, which had turned out to be a good choice as on Isle he was active and productive. Towards the end of Isle, he made a deal with the admin which catalyzed the server's eventual death. Ember would be made based on this example of success, where peace and proximity of players to each other caused activity to flourish. Using Isle as a model for the development of Ember, PvP aspects were added into the mix with the hope that the player base would moderate itself into a friendly rivalry that would ultimately boost player activity. After exams of 2025 were over, there was a 5-day period of school was off, and so it was decided the service should start immediately after exams were over. As Ember was likely to be the final server this group would ever play, there was a large effort to make it as popular as possible. By the end, the probable player list numbered around 30. The source of the players divided into 2 groups, mine and that of the enemy group. My group, named the Freezer Forces for the leader of each of its constituent parts, was an alliance between 3 smaller collectives. We also had an allied group that we kept outside of the core as they were headed by someone else, though on paper we were supposed to cooperate. The other group, named the COW, Children of War, were composed of our traditional enemy on the previous servers, named Mysterion, and the players he invited. Originally, there was an interesting power balance between us before the server began. Out of 3 groups from the Freezer and its allies, only my core group, which would be named Thugistan, had decent players with skill at PvP, while the Cow, who had called themselves villains, were likely to be bellicose warmongers. It was quantity and quality, with our group having the larger numbers. As for the interpersonal relationships of the players, some members of the Freezer held a strong dislike for certain Cow members. 2 of them had that foul combination of cringe and egotistical, and others just kept pushing unfunny gifts in the server Discord before the SMP had began. A Freezer higher up and I disliked the Cow leader for his personality, and for the fact that he caused the death of Isle, and trying to rose law his way out of punishment for manipulating the server owner, an action he would repeat for the rules of Ember before and after it had started. The plugins we had were player headdrops, claims, and simple voice chat. The player locator bar was kept enabled since it greatly helped player activity during Isle. These features would have a major impact on how players on the server would act as it began. With the context there established, the server would open midday on November the 21st. The first day would go as they usually do. With the world border being limited to 5k radius, a breakdown in Freezer communications led to our bases being in the opposite parts of the world. It took substantially longer for my group of the Freezer to get set up properly, finding no villages around to settle at. The Cow set up arrogantly at -1500. I can only wonder if they used Seed Cracker this early. In the beginning, I had under my employ a hitman of sorts. There's this player Ivan, who I did not want in any of my groups, since on a completely peaceful server with no enemies that was made as a correction after an SMP had been killed due to an excess of enemies, he grinded over 5 sets of netherite for no reason. As such, I gave him this role of a hitman due to him badgering me about it, and because Freezer aspects wanted Cow members dead and their heads in our possession. He was incredibly incompetent at this hitman job, requiring authorization from me for everything from trailing randoms to actually attacking the damn targets. Eventually, he switched sides after attacking a Freezer higher up. On the second day of the service, the Cow, already cleared, started attacking our allied group. The name they gave themselves, the Gooners, should say enough about their skill. The problem they faced due to the player locator bar was that the Gooners collectively refused to or forgot to wear player heads to hide themselves on the bar, which got their base leaked many times, the first being on the second day. Thus began the worst concept the server possibly spawned during its lifetime. Headhunting was a tyranny of the Cow to relentlessly attack the least competent players of the server by watching the player locator bar like goddamn hawks and beelining to their location whenever someone died. Naturally, they were only good at it when it came to the shitters of the server. When they tried it on my group, they ended up with cords on the opposite side of the map. Setting aside with other server fuck-ups like a crash reverting 10 minutes of progress occasionally, or a bug with claims letting players fly outside of them, the server was decent at this point. Luckily for us, the caves below the Thugistan base were very rich in diamonds, which gave us a decent leg up in regards to the stacking contest that the whole of Frieza was losing due to the absurd amount of no-lifing Kao was engaging in. They stayed up until nearly 4 AM each day of the 5-day fun period. By the third day of the server, I had gotten tired of the Kao endlessly beating on the Gooners. As such, I mobilized the forces of the Frieza, and at 12 PM we marched on the Kao base. It's worth noting that we had an inside man since before the beginning of the server who had been feeding us intelligence the whole time. The enemy was routed during this first raid, even though I unfortunately had a power cut in the middle of it. We burnt down their crappy wooden mob farm and managed to kill most of them. And I remember specifically the absolute worst member of the Kao, yet somehow the third biggest shit talker, Burb, saying, "We didn't even go for you." Whether that was out of fear or inability to find us, I can't say. The Gooners came late, showing up to the battle after it concluded to get their own petty vengeance. During their raid, the second biggest shit talk of the Kao made the genius decision to try and talk us raiders out of the raid, presumably. They stepped out of their claimed building and died many times because of it. And then they tried to rules lawyer us into a ban, even though it was his fault. Unfortunately, no one was siding with the people trying to rules lawyer after the events of Isle. During the raid, the Frieza killed the Happy Ghast and Burb's stupid boat collection, who would then go apeshit over it and swear petty vengeance upon us. The first battle of the Frieza was as such a complete victory. To commemorate this, we built a monument at Thugistan, displaying the gear and heads we had taken. After this, the Kao, in their arrogance, stopped weighing heads entirely. Midnight the next day, I got my most bloodthirsty member to join the server, who had a deep antipathy for Mysteria, leader of the Kao. I and he, Rice is good in rice farming, raided the Kao base in incomplete Prot 4 diamond armor, and in rice farming's case, even less than that. We burned down their wooden mob farm again, and blew up their trading hall with creepers. And then we faced them in open combat. We had captured them outside their base, even with the majority of the forces still online, so it would have been entirely possible for us to leave. That being said, we had been looking for a fight at that moment, so we took odds incredibly stacked against us. It was 5v2, with 4 of those having netherite. At this point in time, there's a glitch with the Angel Chest plugin that automatically used Totems of Undying, meaning we had absolutely no feasible way of killing any of them. The absolute worst player, Burb, would run out in probably Prot 2 diamond armor and pop totem after totem, despite definitely not being skilled enough to re-equip that fast. Despite all the odds that were against us, the Kao had no chance fighting in water, and so for about 10 minutes, we were locked in a stalemate. Even as I had to retreat because of my armor losing durability, they still couldn't kill rice farming. He eventually logged off at a safe area. Functionally, it was a stalemate. However, we now had a perfect grasp on the caliber of our enemies. With the numbers advantage of the Kao becoming more and more oppressive, I tried to get more of my people on the server. This led to a significant defeat. 12 hours after the probing raid, I tried to extract an ally from spawn. However, the closer position of the Kao meant that I had walked into a trap and I got my logout spot camped in the nether. In a strategic blunder, I summoned the best PvPer of the server, Karambit, and another semi-competent PvPer, being Zebraz, to get me out of the proverbial hole I dug for myself and the literal pit they put me in. This caused the Frieza to lose 2 sets of netherite armor, maces, and tridents. Our loss can be attributed in very large part to the idiocy with the auto totem, seeing as we managed to inflict significant damage on them, but they had stocked on totems with such an effective farm that we had no way of killing them. Fortunately, the Kao were too distracted to look at my locator dot when I was molding over my death to find my base. That day would be a low point for the Frieza. The other base not yet compromised, having been done so 4 hours after the battle. In irony, they would spawn camp the 2 shitters that were at that base for about 30 minutes, getting the 2 players, unfortunate enough to be there, to 100 deaths on the counter. Not that it mattered, since that base was little more than a collection of chests. The worst discovery from that whole incident was that the shitter leader of Kao took my sword, renamed it something shitty, and then put KB2 on it. This would be a reprehensible strategy all of Kao engaged in. 5 hours after that, yet another Gooner base was found. With Thugistan remaining as the only undiscovered Frieza base, the security around ensuring it stayed hidden had to be increased. I moved the dispenser filled with carved pumpkins from the outside of the house to the spawn point set by the bed. This allowed us to stay safe even after her death. The Kao were doing their best to triangulate our base locations at the time. Luckily for us, they had no idea of what quadrant we were even in. Amidst all this loss, the Frieza, which had licked its wounds and prepared for itself to counterattack. We invited another good PvPer to join us, and he would be the second best on the server, Dim Sum. This time, the operation to extract from World Spawn was executed with precision. Dimson only logged on when we had been in position to get him out of spawn. As we exited through the nether roof, we saw on the player locator bar behind us someone trying to find us as we escaped. Though, they would find no trace of us as they expected us to go on the nether floor. At midnight, our spy had given me intel of the underhanded strategies the cow were using mods to make locator tracking easier and an exploit with the lunar weather mod that allowed them to use Riptide on demand. Even in this darkest moment, they were still paranoid of me attacking them. Throughout this period, zebras would steal from the cow upkeep chest a number of times, taking stacks of diamonds and iron each time. The night would pass, and dawn awaited us on the 25th of November. At 8 AM, the autumn totem bug was patched. At 9:32 AM, Zebras mace slammed Burb and stole a max netherite set. 10:35 AM, Zebras acquired a windburst true mace. At 11:56 AM, the combined forces of the Freezer marched upon the enemy. When we approached their base, we had them outnumbered and outskilled. This time, the cow forces were annihilated in an assault on their base. At 12:51, a duel between Karambit and Ivan occurred. Karambit won without popping a single totem, though this was fraught with hardship, as they had an enormous amount of totems, and they used the strategy of putting thorns on their armor pieces. At 12:56, the Freezer withdrew after we had ran out of potions and won that duel. The valiant actions during the battle would enshrine the legendary warriors of the Freezer, with Zebras being named the Mace God for destroying two major enemies with his Windburst Mace, which helped to turn the tide of the battle. This victory spawned an even greater monument. As we returned to the Thuggistan and continued on, the ugly head of the shitter exploding lunar had revealed itself, tridentting over to our base. I would have tried to get him banned for this obvious cheating, but the previous evidence of our spy would reveal him. However,
he's flying.
with the shitter upon the walls themselves flying around like it was normal, it could actually be done. The evidence contained within the recording of that day's battle, unusable as their waypoints, could then be used as the shitter already had the coordinates to our base. As such, I made an appeal to the admin, who due to his own character weakness could not take a decisive stance on the issue, falling for what was frankly weak and shitty arguments to why the shitter should not have been banned for obviously exploiting. Needless to say, the whole situation was really stupid, and a blatantly cheating shitter did not get banned due to the own admin's weakness of character. Sometime during this day, we had embarked on a raid, however, the enemy was not there, leaving only a shitter we had marked down as one of the Gooners. In our bloodlust, we had jumped him before he could even explain that he was a spy for the Gooners. This caused him to lose a set of netherite armor, though it would not really matter as he later would get a new set. By this point, we had so thoroughly beat them, they were looking for any tiny way to claim a victory. Since they had our coordinates, they resorted to breaking the villager breeder we had to keep outside of claim bounds, or breaking the one cell of the iron farm I forgot to claim, or destroying our nether portal for whatever reason. That night, they tried to stand outside the base again for the purpose of reclaiming Burb's chestplate, which we had taken as a spoil of war. This absolute dogshit play was met with no response, as by that point, Turkestan had moved underground and connected the few above ground buildings with a system of tunnels. As we dug, however, we made the mistake of digging into an incomplete basement of a house that had began construction during the start of the server, which allowed the enemy inside the bunker. Due to this, I was forced to log out and could not turn on mob griefing for the claim, which would have let the cow eventually destroy Turkestan. Thankfully, our spy informed me of this blunder, and I managed to fix that before it caused severe damage. During this period though, they blew up the back of the iron farm with a creeper. But they were so incompetent with this attempt, the iron farm continued to work anyway. Due to our refusal of returning our rightful plunder, a neutral that we had been tolerating in our Discord had to be kicked, as he had sympathies for the cow, being better friends with their members. The risk to operations was too high, as if we let him continue being in our Discord, he might have exposed our spy. The day after, school started up again, and the enmity between us all was cooler as we had to see each other's faces. Though that meant some of the bastards who were willing to skip school were trying to steal a mart on us at Freezer, who all had too much dignity to stoop to that level. With the shitters at Cal having accords now, they pulled up to Turkestan, demanding duels for whatever stupid reason they came up with. They spent the better part of an hour trying to goad me into a 1v1 with a goddamn squeaker, because I burned down his shitty bunker or something during a raid. They thought because we gave them the courtesy of a 1v1 after we'd kicked their shit in, meant that they get to demand it whenever and for whatever. The worst part for that was that I wasn't even listening to these small dogs barking, and I had my chat muted the whole time. 20 minutes later, the second best PvP on the server, Dim Sum, sallied forth from Turkestan and sneak attacked the cow again, dropping Anura, the most hated member of the cow, and causing Ivan to pop a totem. Over the course of the next hour, Dim Sum would single-handedly cause the cow to pop 20 totems. He, however, like Icarus, flew too close to the sun, and took an organized 3v1 in the arena we used to conclude the third battle of Cow Base and got his shit kicked in. The day after, the construction of the Turkestan bunker would expand greatly due to the efforts of Foreigner, who had two bases already been destroyed due to the cow. He built the storage room and the brewing area within it, the meeting room, and started work on the quarters of the Freezer members, by that point having been assimilated into Turkestan. At 10:32 AM, Anura raided Turkestan while the majority of us was at school, griefing the raid farms as they were outside the claim, and having a staring contest with Foreigner and another member who was trapped inside the above ground buildings. At 12:48 PM, neutral member Peanut skipped school to grind the SMP, killing 5 withers in quick succession. When the school day ended, intel was given by Karambit, Ivan having told him in person the quantity of gear the cow possessed, 20 netherite sets, and 12 double chests worth of totems. Anura himself would have 45 netherite ingots. This would prompt an investigation from the server admin, who examined the statistics of all the players. Spy the Gooners had informed us of X-ray use within the cow, however, the investigation would reveal the true extent of their cheating. Anura himself had mined 388 ancient debris, adds a notable hyper shitter mined 74. They had mined much less netherrack than Zebras, who had only 57 debris mined. Further, spy intel indicated they had no working sheep farm, nor the sand required for the TNT amounts that would have been needed for this volume of ancient debris. With all this evidence, the guilt of Anura and other cow members was essentially proven. Anura eventually decided to throw himself and his team under the bus by confessing to the cheating. In a bizarre turn of events, he even accused seemingly innocent members to get them banned as well, so they would join his new fair server. Even after their crimes were proven, Zebras, the admin, could not take decisive action due to his weakness of character and refused to ban Anura. After we had dictated our terms to Anura, which notably included public humiliation via a YouTube apology video, Anura remained on the server, which would have allowed him to transfer any items from his ender chest to their normal storage, essentially performing money laundering. I, alongside Karambit and Rice Farming, seek to enforce the rules of the server and march on the cow base. This would prove a terrible mistake, as we ended up trapped in the base, unable to get out. The warriors I had brought along neglected to set up an ender pearl stasis, meaning we could not escape. We were stuck between a rock and a hard place, with more enemies slowly joining. The only option available for us was to reveal our spy by having him dig us out of the bunker that we had bullheadedly ran into. This would have lost the freezer a crucial asset which had been the sole reason we had not been destroyed on multiple occasions. And if we didn't, it would have cost us 2 netherite sets and the honor of Rice Farming, who had not died yet, and Karambit, who was recognized as the best PvPer on the server. The consequences of this action were not what I had expected, but as we broke through an empty cell of the trading hall, our spy had been hiding his name tag. This deception led the other cow members watching us, in their singular focus on me, had neglected any other possible explanations on how we had escaped. As such, they pinned the blame on I alone. In order to keep our strategic advantage, I decided to be a scapegoat, volunteering to take a ban as punishment for something I had not done. Due to this shitfuckery, which would have never occurred had the admin just done his job properly, the cow successfully suggested to Zebraz that both of our bans be decreased to a warning, with the next infraction being permanent. These terms were horse shit, as the next ban would have caused the death of the server anyways, and with me taking a punishment for a non-existent crime, Pride refused to allow this cat earphone wearing, neckbeard having, ginger fucking cheater to get away with it. I demanded instead equality in punishment, having I and he both be banned instead. As the leader of the only team not cheating out of their ass, which Zebraz himself could attest to since he was living at our base, he eventually relented to this course of action. The cow seemed to take it decently enough, probably because the freezer lost a lot more than they did, as I was the most productive player on our side, with Anura making up only a substantial proportion of the cow's productivity. The day after, the shitter that was banned attempted to rage bait me in the Discord, where it was ineffective due to the gooners and my own freezer members making up the Discord's majority. By this point, the 2 banned hards, Ads and Anura, were trying to lawyer their way out of the bans even though it had only been for a single day at that point. This had even worked, as Anura had been on server for the time while we had been at school. This time meant to issue an ultimatum to Zebraz, threatening the server's death. During this time, Peanut, who had been one of the 3 that killed Dim Sum, raided Thugistan. With only Foreigner and Dim Sum online at the time, his provocation, "Foreigner and Dim Sum, I've come to take your heads," was taken offense to by Dim Sum, who had the skill and the bloodlust to take on a fight on such uneven odds as that time before. Peanut was forced to stasis out by Dim Sum, who had diamond to his netherite. Later, we had our spy allow Dim Sum into the cow base while he was AFK, where Dim Sum killed him. At this point, we had been entirely tired of cow posturing, and as I delivered terms that I felt were acceptable, I lost my shit as they continued to focus on the cheating I did. I decided to reveal our spy, which silenced their bitching, but with their complete loss evident, the cow collectively decided to quit. The day after the end was open, however, the most of the freezer had already decided to hang up our weapons, and the server died shortly after that. The Ember SMP was glorious for the week that it existed for. It burned bright, but not for too long. I think it could have lasted longer, had the cow not cheated, and incompetence on the part of the admin not driven resentment and hate between our groups. Though in the end, our egos and enmity for each other created a toxic spiral that burned the server as its fuel, eventually resulting in only one group standing at the end and the other leaving. Even if its death was caused by these unnatural factors, as the last opportunity to have an SMP on this scale, I can say Ember managed to be a worthy conclusion to the series of servers that were hosted by Zebraz. It was by far the most eventful of all the servers past, and though it was not the longest lived, it made up for it in its concentration of eventful moments.